conference is now starting. All attendees can now hear you.
Hello and welcome to the OASIS DITA to XLIFF and Back webinar, 2 Complementary Standards. This is the Value Proposition webinar. I am the organizer. My name is Dee Shore. I work for OASIS. This webinar will be downloadable at the following link. And once again, I will remind you of this at the end of the webinar. I would like to begin by introducing Joanne Hackos, who's the President of Comtech Services. She's also the OASIS DITA Adoption Technical Committee Convener and the OASIS DITA Translation Subcommittee Chair. Just a few tips before I turn it over to Joanne. To reduce or expand your control panel, that's the box on the right side of your screen. Click on the side tab. There are 3 arrows on that side tab, and that will reduce your entire dashboard. If you would like to send a question at any point during the entire webinar, please type the question in your question box. That question will come to me or a presenter. We will answer as many questions as we possibly can, time permitting. We have allocated 90 minutes for this webinar. So once again, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If we don't get all your questions answered, you can... Hello?
Hello, it's Andre here. Hello?
Hi, Andre. We're just getting started.
We got started already.
We're just getting started. Thank you for joining. Once again, just a few tips for the attendees. If you would like to reduce the presentation window and see your other browsers, click on the square tab, once again on that side tab located on your control panel, or select View on your top tab and choose Windows. Once again, the webinars will be available and downloadable within a few days. And at this point, I would like to hand it over to Joanne.
Thank you, Dee. I hope that everyone can see the first slide. Let me know if it's visible. There we go.
There you go. Thanks, Joanne.
Okay. Is that working okay?
Right, you might want to expand your screen.
Okay, that's about the biggest it's going to get.
Okay, that's fine. It's perfect.
Okay. All right. So today we are doing the first of 2 webinars that are going to discuss the relationship between 2 great OASIS standards, DITA and XLIFF. And I'm going to briefly explain what those are for anybody who's joining this call and doesn't know. But we want to explain how these 2 complementary standards work together to reduce the costs and risks of translating XML content. So we're very excited about this first of 2 webinars. And I'll remind everybody, of course, that the second one is coming next week. Okay, let's see. Today's webinar, we're going to present the business case to show how these 2 powerful OASIS standards come together. You get a process in this round-tripping of DITA to XLIFF and back to DITA again that will help you reduce the costs and also the risks associated with translating topic-oriented XML-based content. We want to emphasize that. We're really talking about the topic-oriented world here. And the issues of having many, many topics is going to be one of the themes that we discuss in this webinar. But we're also going to give you some context about the XML business case and the DITA translation business case in general. The kinds of questions we want to answer today in the business session are, first of all, to make sure that everyone knows what the standard is and what it has to do with the localization and translation of content. We also want to explain what the XLIFF standard is. It stands for the XML Localization Interchange File Format, and we want you to understand what advantages it provides to DITA users who need to translate content. And at the end of this webinar, we remember it, by the way, everyone, that this is scheduled for 90 minutes. So if you want to see our demonstration, you need to stick around, and that's where we'll show how the round trip from DITA to XLIFF the advantages that it provides us. Today, our participants are going to be myself as chair of the DITA Translation Subcommittee, which is one of the sponsors of this activity, and also the co-chair of the new DITA Adoption Technical Committee. I'm joined by Nick Rosenthal, who's the Managing Director of Salford Translations Limited, and also a member in good standing of the Translation Subcommittee. Andre Drone will be assisting us in the Q&A session today from XML International, and also not only a member of DITA Translation Subcommittee, but also the new chair of the OXL Technical Committee at OASIS. Tony Judashenko, Director of R&D, Product Innovator Limited, and co-chair of the XLIFF Technical Committee, and Peter Lee, Principal Architect Specialist at PTC. So these are our participants in today's session. On September 23rd, we will have the second of the webinars associated with this topic. That will present our detailed technical case that shows how XLIFF provides a mechanism to reduce costs and eliminate much of the risk from the process. You'll learn there that by packaging DITA files through XLIFF, you can deliver a package to your LSP, your localization service provider, that's easier and less costly to manage. We'll allude to some of that today, but some of the detail of the technical transformations will be presented on the Tuesday webinar. At that webinar, we have 4 presenters, including myself, introducing the topics, and but the primary presentations will be from Brian Schnabel, Information Architect at Tektronix and co-chair of the XLIFF Technical Committee, Rodolfo Rayo, CTO of Max Programs, is Secretary of XLIFF PC and member of the DITA Translation Subcommittee, and again, Andre Drone from XML International. The Translation Subcommittee, as I mentioned, is the host of the OASIS, one of the 2 OASIS hostesses. We advise the DITA Technical Committee on issues critical to localization and translation practices. We propose enhancements to the DITA architectural stack, and we have been developing a series of best practices for authors, businesses, and localization service providers. You can find those best practices on the translation pages of dita.xml.org. The XLIFF Technical Committee is responsible for the XLIFF specification. As I said, here's what it stands for. XLIFF is intended to give software providers and technical communicators a single interchange file format that can be used and easily understood by your localization service providers. Okay, now I want to go on to introducing our next speaker. And Dee, am I moving the ball at this one?
Absolutely.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to figure out how to do that.
That's okay, and we're going to Nick, correct?
Well, let's see. I'm going to do this.
I mean, I can just tell me who we need. We're going to Nick, correct?
We're going next now to Nick Rosenthal, who's going to give us the perspective of the localization service provider in working with DITA content.
Thank you, Joanne. Let me call up my slides.
Perfect.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Rosenthal. I'm the Managing Director at Solvent Translations, and work with Joanne and other people here on the Translation Subcommittee of the DITA. I'm talking about how to get the best from your translation vendor, or what your translation vendor is looking for in using DITA and XLIFF, and the appeal of DITA and XLIFF as a workflow route. We often hear DITA will save me money, and I'd like to explore what we really mean by that, and how we actually achieve financial savings. Where do those cost savings come from? This is just a recap of any form of XML. you get cost savings from two areas. Firstly, from separating form and content, but secondly, by only translating new material. Separating form and content, if the layout side of things is fully automated, you can save the layout cost in each target language, as well as in the source language. So if you're translating into multiple languages, this can be a considerable saving. DITA's very good at this. Once you've got all of your transforms set up, so at the push of a button you can output the material to the right form of help system, or to a PDF document, or to both. The publishing side of it is then handled. The emphasis here, obviously, is on automatically. There's some setup costs involved, but that should be recouped many times over. The other place where you save money is by only translating new material. Tony Lettachenko and I were talking about this the other day, and we came up with an analogy of sending your shirts to the laundry service. If you've got 20 shirts that you roll through and only 5 will actually need laundering, if you send all 20 to the laundry service, there's going to be some sort of cost for working out which ones need laundering, which don't. And the beauty of using DITA with a good content management system is it helps you identify which shirts really need attention and only to send those shirts to the laundry service. So with a good content management system, you can end up only sending out to your translation service provider the new material that actually needs translating. You don't send them at all anything that's already correctly translated and hasn't been altered in the source materials. And that obviously gives us a cost saving. What do translation companies look for from DITA? I guess really the same as for most other procedures. We tend to look for simple, straightforward processes. We look for scalable processes. We could be working on DITA materials, for example, for a lone author working on his own in a company. We could equally well be working for an enterprise-level organisation that's perhaps got 150 authors distributed around the globe, and we need a scalable process there so that we can handle materials in different ways, and that includes drip feeding of files, either individually or in batches or by topic. We look for processes that allow the translation companies to focus on translating materials into foreign languages and doing so to a high standard, and it's easy to lose sight of that. It's a very important point in your documentation. If data conversion is involved, for example, converting from DITA to XLIFF and back, we look for conversion tools and routines that are robust and dependable. And I think, ideally, translation companies will look for methods that enable us to continue using existing translation memory tools, simply for the reason that most translation companies will have a considerable investment in those, both in the actual tools themselves and in staff expertise in using the tools. That said, there's a lot of change in that market as well, and most translation companies are very open to exploring new options as well there. Business benefits of translating DITA via XLIFF. Well, any process that involves translating 768 small individual files as part of a help system probably not going to be overly attractive to translation companies. I suspect it's not going to be overly attractive to most technical authors, and it'll result in high management overheads, which means less cost savings for the client. One of the joys of using DITA is, with XLIFF is it allows us to aggregate a large number of small DITA files into a single XLIFF file that can offer cost-effective processing, reduce management overheads, and that brings a significant potential cost saving and simplification. So how can we put that together? If you're rolling out documentation in DITA with an eye to translating it into different languages, what should you do? The first thing to do is a very, very simple thing: engage your translation supplier in dialogue at an early stage. Discuss with them and agree workflows that work effectively for you and that also work effectively for your translation vendor. It should be a win-win situation. Talk about file formats and engineering issues. Now, your mileage may vary on this. Some independent may end up sending DITA files to the translation company and using their expertise to convert to XLIFF. Other clients will have, enterprise level solutions to this, which involve web-based delivery methods and multiple drops. But it's important to discuss what the workflow is going to be, to work out who's going to be responsible for the engineering side, for the conversion from DITA to XLIFF. And by the same token, it's good to agree the deliverables. What are you expecting to get back? Are you looking to get back an XLIFF file for each language, or are you looking to have the translation supplier do those conversions, or are you relying on automation to do those conversions? And that's it from me. Back to Joanne now.
Okay.
Okay, Dee, there we go. Let's take a look at, I want to thank Nick for giving us that perspective, because I think it's really critical to our understanding of how all of these pieces really work together. And I hope everybody can see the screen again. What I'd like to do is step back a little bit now. Nick has given us a really good introduction to the way you need to think about the relationship you have, especially if you're now moving to a new way of working. I think that any translation provider, like Nick's organization, really would like to know what's coming and to have a plan ready to understand how it is going to impact and change the way the process works. Now, what I'd like to do, as I said, is stepping back a little bit, is to look at the DITA model to start out with. So let's just talk about that a little bit. Some of you on the call may not know some of the specifics. DITA, pronounced DITA, stands for the Darwin Information Typing Architecture. It's called Darwin because the DITA model relies on the principles of inheritance and change through specialization. Much as Darwin talks about the changes that occurred in the Darwin finches in the Galapagos Islands, we expect that people coming into the DITA model will perhaps start with the standard out-of-the-box DITA, but may, as they progress, need some specialization to work with their content more effectively. Information typing means that DITA is based on a topic architecture that is also based upon the concept of information types, in this case, or information types of content types. And as far as an architecture, of course, DITA provides a framework for the development of an information model, a specific information model in your organization. Now, within this model, of course, we have some specifics. DITA is a topic-oriented architecture, which means that we can create information that can easily be reused and single-sourced, which is, of course, of a great interest today to technical communication organizations. It allows for the creation of new topic types and to describe new information domains based on existing topic types and domains. Now, by what I mean by that is what we've seen in the DITA community since its formal introduction in 2004. The move of particular domain communities into a specialization of DITA. For example, the very active semiconductor domain is looking at creating an environment in which semiconductor-specific information can really be managed effectively. So, if we look at this, it is not just another tool, but it is an international standard that really supports structured authoring and content reuse, efficiency and cost saving in any technical domain. And in fact, we're continuing to expand DITA into the global enterprise content management arena and introducing new parts of the organization to this. So let's look at just a quick review of the major principles. The first is topic orientation. And this is what's going to be the challenge, I think, that Nick's pointing us toward in a translation issue. It's a wonderful way of authoring when we can create standalone discrete units of information that have a specific message that we're delivering to the customers. But it means that we create a lot of small files, and that becomes something that's new. Topic granularity, the idea of a topic is it's self-contained. It can be read and understood as one set, even though someone may need knowledge from other areas. That knowledge is available to them through links and not through long dissertations on subject matter. Strong information typing means that we introduce a discipline into the planning and design and architecture and writing of topics so that the structures of a concept or of a reference item or of a task are repeatable structures. The DTDs and schemas that come with the DITA Open Toolkit provide that structural baseline from many organizations. Specialization, as I mentioned in describing Darwin, allows us to extend the basic information types that are provided in the DITA specification and in the DITA Open Toolkit and introduce new types that are particularly appropriate for your organization alone or your subject matter. So when we see the semiconductor industry members getting together and writing a specialization for the register description, we're properly using that mechanism. But at the same time, we have a mechanism within the DITA model called the common base class. And that means if I have a specialization of my content and you have one of yours, we can still exchange information, since each one of those special XML tags will fall back to a generic base topic type and allow that information to be understood and to be exchanged and to be reviewed in a much broader environment, in a global environment, and also between a company and its suppliers or a company and its customers. So we're very enthusiastic about the advantages that DITA provides all along the line. DITA at OASIS, just to remind everyone who may not know this, began in 2004 when IBM had contributed a baseline of DITA to OASIS as an open standard, and we formed the architecture DITA technical committee, and then that standard 1.0 was formally published in 2005. In 2006, we published the 1.1 version. We're hard at work now with the 1.2 version, including some additions for translation and managing of translated content. DITA also is supported by the DITA Open Toolkit available through SourceForge, and it has many growing number of domain-specific communities, including semiconductor folks working on the development of health systems, embedded health systems, the learning and training subcommittee, and then, of course, our translation group, which has been very active in this. Recently, we formed the DITA Adoption Technical Committee to promote DITA adoption worldwide. These resources are available for you as you begin looking at DITA, and this is just a list that you can go to, including our well-known focus area, dita.xml.org. Okay, so what does DITA really mean then in this localization environment? Well, as Nick pointed out, I've got lots of topics. I can have, if I'm doing a whole set of content for a whole new product line, by the way, I'm hearing a lot of background noise, and somebody can go on to mute. I have a lot of topics. I have a lot of topics in my repository. I have a lot of topics that I'm managing. And I need to localize and translate those topics. So I'm ready for localization and translation. Now, luckily, I have topics that are done already, although the other ones are still in process. They're being written. They're being reviewed. I've got this set of topics, this small set of topics that's ready to go. Well, that means I can get my localization process started early. In this case, 2 months early, I'm going to start sending these topics out for localization. But I'm working in an existing environment. I've been working with my topics for a long time, And some of these topics are not new topics. If I'm using a good translation packaging method, I'm taking these topics, packaging them up, and then I look at the analysis of these that I'm discussing with my localization service provider, and I see some interesting things. I've got a new topic. This is a completely newly written. It needs to be translated from scratch, although some aspects of it may be already stored in translation memory. So I would expect my LSP to apply translation memory to this new topic. But I've also got another topic. This one has only minor changes. That means the bulk of the content is exactly the same as in the last translation. So what I'm hoping here is that I have all of these nice ice matches, perfect matches, and just the new pieces are going to require translation. And now sometimes you may have a content management system that's configured to pull in only the new text in a minor change, and leave the others as previously translated into the target languages. Not every system will do that, but some, certainly those using the new XML TM standard, which you'll learn more a little bit about next time from the OASIS OXL Technical Committee, will extend the power of your content management system. So here I've got a minor change, and I really only want to have retranslation on the new material. Again, translation memory will help me do that. I've got another new topic. Again, translation memory is going to kick in here, especially if I've gotten my writers to be careful about reusing standard phrases, which I might be doing through a quality management system in place. It's reminding the writer that the last time they said click on OK, and this time they're saying push the OK button, and it really does mean the same thing. And here I've got a topic with major changes. Now, the major change may mean that very little of the existing content is going to be picked up through the translation memory, but I want to make sure that all of that context is available for the service provider. So in this case, here's my sort of traditional way of using XML and topic-based architecture to start my translation process early. I don't have to wait until the whole collection is done or a whole book is done. I don't have to wait for that. I can get things going earlier. And for many of us, the advantage of having translations done to simultaneously ship globally a new product introduction is an enormously important for revenue generation within the company as a whole. So as a translation coordinator in a company or as a publications manager in the company, I'm interested in giving the translators the opportunity to get going more quickly. And I know that organizations like Nick's organization is going to appreciate the fact that we're giving the translators 2 months to get started on the translation instead of 2 weeks or 2 days or even sometimes 2 hours. So we're really, improving the quality of translation because we're not burdening people at the last second on the project. So what does this all mean? We think about it, we get topics approved and ready for localization faster. We only send out newer changed topics to be localized, and only newer changed content within those topics needs to be localized. And then our topics can be reused in multiple contexts, reducing duplication of effort or near duplication, or even growing inaccuracies in a host of target languages because of growing differences and inaccuracies in the source language. We get many opportunities to control the source language through disciplined and structured authoring. And we're going to add to this the ability through XLIFF to edit and translate a map or final map or working map or small map at map level. And that's something we'll be able to show you. What are the opportunities? This gives us more reliable standards in the source language through XML and the reuse of content at the topic level. More opportunities to standardize and produce consistent content. More reliable use of the translation memory, because instead of having 14 versions of the same set of instructions, all of them slightly different, because different people have changed the language a little bit in the source. Now we have exactly the same reused content, stored once, managed once. That's going to give us better use of translation memory at the top level and better use of the pre-translation activity within our content management system. Better scheduled, less chaos at the end. I think also reduced time for the cost of production in multiple languages, which is just enormously valuable in terms of the increasing revenue stream that your companies are depending upon for localized content. We also get through DITA automatic topic relationships that eliminate a lot of hand coding of reference and links, because we can create what we call the relationship tables that show in table form and not in hard-coded form how certain topics are related to other topics. The smoothing of the process, the decreasing in costs for an individual project to one language, what does it mean for organizations? I've been at Best Practices CIDM conference all this week, and the senior managers who are present at this conference are telling us that implementation of XML and DITA is reducing their costs for one language and leading very specifically to more languages and more content for each language being localized. So, they're using their budget in a much more effective revenue-generating way in their organization. Okay, so what does DITA mean now? As Nick pointed us to this one, that one of the things that we're going to look at in DITA is to eliminate what can often be the very high cost of final production. That starts out in the source language, of course. We want to use XML and apply style sheets at the end of the process so that we take away what is often a pretty significant amount of time that our writers might be using formatting content in a non-XML environment. We want to add the styles after the material is correct. We want to add styles after the topics are assembled into DITA maps. And we want to do that automated production also by adding in all of our graphic images as references. And in many cases, like the project we're engaged in right now, we're actually moving data from a mainframe purchasing system into a product catalog so that none of it has to be hand-coded, and all of it looks like a beautiful catalog for print publication and a beautiful catalog for HTML publication with two different style sheets. We can also, of course, in all of this process with DITA production, filter the content. That means that we may have some content that we don't want translated, and we can set the attribute as a translate no. We might have some content that is specific to a geography. So many of us have special warnings and cautions that are present in only certain countries and in certain languages. And we can use the map process and the process involving what we call the DITA val file. The DITA val file is the place where we set the filtering attributes or the profiling attributes, and then produce multiple content in multiple languages. So it goes from the core source language, the core target languages, to multiple outputs. And I talked to colleagues this week who say that they're, in one case, in a medical products company, they're producing 540 different outputs in multiple languages from the same source. And that's really pretty spectacular. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of overall translation costs? This slide is the courtesy of my colleague Neil Skepper at TreeSoft. But if we look at translation costs in the old world, we've got 100% of our costs. Translation memory systems have now been with us for some years, and they have been significant in reducing translation costs. And you see that in this case, the blue line is getting shorter. But my orange and my green stay pretty much the same with translation memory. We've got We're storing the standard phrases that have already been translated, so we don't have to translate them again. Now we introduce DITA, XML DITA, and you notice that what changes is the desktop publishing. The green box gets smaller because we pretty much eliminated the cost of desktop publishing in all languages, including the source, because we're just extending those styles as kind of a push-the-button final production. If we introduce reuse, which of course we want to do through the topic-oriented architecture of DITA, now we're reducing translation costs. You can see the blue line getting shorter because I'm reusing the same content. It's been translated once and I can use it many times. But you notice my orange bar just got longer. And that's because my administrative costs may be increasing. If I introduce one other aspect to this, and that is workflow between my content management system and the translation management system being managed by my provider, then I make a little dent into decreasing my admin costs. If I completely integrate that process and send these files smoothly from one place to the other, now using XLIFF, introducing the whole idea of XLIFF and collecting the files and collating them and putting them into a package that is easier to deal with, I can further reduce those admin costs. So you see that reduction. If I add to this what we call pre-translation, and that is making sure that in my packaging of my translation from my content management system, I am sending out only the new topics, only the changed topics. And further, if I'm sending out only the changed sentences in the changed topics, although you see the topic, the court translator, of course, sees the topic as a whole, and in fact may see the book as a whole with the attachment of the PDF. Now I've again reduced my translation, admin, and desktop publishing costs altogether. So I think this is a neat slide to look at. To summarize it, translation memory reduces costs, and we proceed through this process, including the introduction of XML-TM as part of the pre-translation process. So here we go. Our translation problem is we've got lots and lots of files. We're ready for localization and translation. But too many small files increases translation costs because we've got a lot of pieces that the service vendor has to handle and make sense of. If we have XLIFF coming to the rescue, package, my nice packaging now, organizes these files into a single package for translation and collates the content and makes it easier to manage. Okay, there we go. Steve, would you like to hand this over now to Peter Lee, who's going to talk to us about a particular customer situation?
Absolutely.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so...
And we see your screen. Perfect. Thanks, Peter.
Excellent. So, thank you everyone for who's on the call. Just a quick intro. My name is Peter Lee. I am a principal architect specialist for PDC. So just for those who didn't know, that PDC acquired Architects about 3 years ago. And that product range is going to straight. We're adding more products, we're adding more capabilities to it. So this what I want to share with you today really is an implementation that we've been working on for a number of years. It's one of our best customers, and we're still working there. We're still trying to improve the process. So this particular work that we're doing and for this big customer is about the translation management process. The kind of things that Joanne and Nick have been talking about in terms of content management systems. Okay. So in terms of agenda, I've got 5 basic points that I want to share with you. So a little bit about the customer, who they are, what they do. I'm going to talk about the business side. What is it in their particular business they saw as a challenge that they needed to address. We'll look a little bit about the requirements they had from a business perspective. also from the technology perspective. And then finally share with you the approach that we took and some of the business benefits that we're already realizing in sort of phase 1 and 2 of the project. And I have an extra slide on sort of the futures. What is it that we're talking to these guys about now for the future? So in terms of the custom sellers, who are they? Well, they're a big company. They've been around for a long, long time. They were founded in 1837, would you believe? They have a global presence, nearly 52,000 employees worldwide, 21 marketing offices worldwide, and 16 main manufacturing sites all over the world, with net sales and revenues for 2007 approaching 21 billion, and they're looking to increase that for this fiscal year as well. So they're a big player, big customer. In terms of the business drivers, why they have to do it, it's quite simple really. As a big player in the market, they saw that the opportunities in their home market were shrinking. There was so much, there's a finite amount of equipment, of stuff that they could sell to people. So they have to really look away from their home market. And today, you got to work market. You can't just say, well, this is how I want to work, you're going to accept that. So they really need to look at the market, the target markets that they want to go to, and be able to articulate their message in a local language. Okay. The second driver is very, very important. The products, the machinery could not ship until the documentation was ready. That was a prime prerequisite. And finally, revenues could not be recognised until the product has been shipped. So they have this chain of events that have to go from there. They have to be a 1, 2, 3 step, and documentation is a very, very key factor in that. Okay. So, let's have a look at the requirements. So I'm going to break this down into 2 parts. From the business perspective, obviously, cutting costs is a key factor for any business today. Reducing costs through reuse. So don't reinvent the wheel. If it's already been done, reuse it. And obviously reduce the overtime, reduce documentation. The quicker they can get that documentation done and out the door, the quicker they can get the product out the door, the quicker they can realise the recognised revenues. Okay, they're fine. Of course, there's a number of other business reasons that I've picked the top 3 for you. So, in terms of technology, very basic. The master, they have a concept of a master language, which in this case is English, and what they want to see is that the master language drives the organisation of the localised language. Okay, so if there's a change in the master language, it has to reflect in the localised language. Okay, in terms of the folder structure, the link, and all those sort of good things have to match from the master language to the localised language. So that's number 1. Number 2, we have to support the concept of packaging. So what this company wants to make sure is that when things needed to be updated in the main package, that they didn't have to send the whole package, they can just send the Delta package, and that's why we use DITA and other sort of component-based data models to achieve that. And then another requirement was that they have to be able to have the tightening up the security of the content. Okay, so as the package is created, it gets shipped out to their translation service provider. That could be a number of different organizations using a number of different technologies. That was one of the key requirements. So whatever we set as a package must be able to be used by any company, whether it's STL, whether it's Star, whether it's Ahead, whoever. That we have to be able to satisfy that criteria. So it goes to the translation company. The translation company takes the information, it creates the localized content, it then reproduces and updates the package, and that package gets imported back into the content management system and is associated with the original master language. Okay, so that's another requirement that changes to the master has to reflect and are localized. Okay, and then this particular company has a third requirement for a review and approval process. So when the content came back in, they had their own local affiliates or internal people actually recheck the information that's being done by the translation company. Okay, that's pretty much what you see on the screen is the solution that we implemented with this company. Okay. And in terms of the business benefits, the payback, we're not, they weren't going to do this if we wasn't going to give them some payback. Yeah, we think that requirement very much on the head. They saw a reduction of translation costs from $1.4 million per year. That's 200K. With all the things I mentioned in terms of reusing the stuff, that all being translated. Okay. The second benefit we saw was they could increase the number of supported languages. So prior to the technology being implemented, they just about fudge a certain number of supported languages. They've increased it to 18. And then finally, in terms of business benefits, as Joe mentioned, we could, to increase the overtime, decreasing the overtime to get this documentation out, we could allow the translation process to happen in parallel. So rather than waiting for the whole publication to be ready, documentation operations maintenance manual, they can actually send and start the process going as soon as one part is ready. Okay. And finally, in terms of futures, what I'm calling version 2 plus, they're going to evaluate complementary technologies and best practices as it becomes available. So technologies like XLIFF and OASIS, if this is going to make an impact on the overall strategy to reduce costs and increase efficiency, they're going to have a look at it. Okay. And finally, they want to increase the number of languages we support. I think their target is something like 33 languages. So we're sort of over halfway to achieving that. But we're still a long way to go. And then finally, keep driving the cost down and keep increasing the efficiency. That's pretty much a requirement for any business. Okay. That very, very quick introduction. Is basically, is me done. Hopefully that's giving you a little bit of food for thought on, what is achievable. So, it's great to hear Nick and Joe talk about, the concepts and, what you can do. And this company is doing it. It's achieving a lot of what we've been talking about today. So thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you found some value there.
Thank you, Peter.
We want to shift the ball over to Tony, and he's going to give us other examples of especially the XLIFF perspective and how this will work.
Hi there. Sorry about that. I have my mute on, so I'm just getting it started now. All right. Okay. Hopefully you can see that on the screen.
Yep.
I'm here to talk about automating the content localization process using DITA, XLIFF, and CMS. I'll introduce myself. I'm Tony Evtushenko. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. I work for Product Innovator Limited. It's a consultancy that helps organizations get process improvement practices in place. So, what is CMS? So, typically, what it is, it's a fairly large enterprise system that either creates or acquires content in varying forms of source content, source formats. It organizes and structures the content to be fairly easily process. It also helps to ensure that the content has metadata associated with it, stored in a way that can actually be from a repository or updated as required. And it also would have some sort of business and workflow rules that they're going to assist in customizing and ensuring that the workflow business rules actually match the requirements of the customer. And there's also the publishing. It publishes to various formats and outputs, not just the one. So who uses a CMS? Well, typically it's any organization that's got a lot of different people that are involved in the creation or maintenance of the content. It's where there's also a lot of revisions. So things like, for example, point of documentation and or patches, where you have a lot of things to keep track and also where there's just simply a lot of content where you got thousands or perhaps even millions of individual assets to track and make sure are actually being managed appropriately. And also, well, if you're actually publishing nowadays, you're oftentimes publishing not just in one format. So you got HTML. You're going to have also your PDF formats to work with, and also potentially you're still going to be publishing to hard copy or some other format, help and so forth. And again, with workflow, really CMS's best selling point is it helps you make sure you have as fast a turnaround as possible. It really makes sure that the process of working a piece of content through your different stakeholders is actually managed in as quick a turnaround as possible. Again, quality is quite important because when you're working with lots of different assets and different types of formats, an automated process just takes away a lot of the typical human errors that are introduced when moving content around. Typical workflow system where we'd be looking at would have a few different process points that it would actually go through in its life cycle. So the workflow typically would be some content would occur in an authoring domain. So you're using some sort of tool to the content. You then update it to a repository, and then that then goes through some sort of review process. It gets stored and updated and then reviewed again perhaps for technical accuracy before it gets shipped off to some publishing workflow point where you might choose to do HTML help, and perhaps also PDF, and then you're finally going to deploy and archive. And maybe you might actually end of life the content sometime later as well. So with that, then since we're talking about translation, the process of globalizing the content, we also need to talk about globalization management systems. And what that consists of is it's a CMS, first of all, usually is at the heart of this. And that's then working with or deployed, integrated with CMS integrators, with then also workflow engines specific to the GMS, and some translation repositories. So it's either be part of the CMS, or typically you have also metadata needs to be tracked separately. So you want to have a separate translation repository for work in progress and so forth. And then finally you've got computer-aided software. So computer-aided translation software, that is. And that's translation memory, term-based, so terminology, glossaries for you and me, multilingual glossaries. And then there's also machine translation. And depending upon which you use, you can have a suite of different CAT software tools that either encompass all of these different categories of tools, or just typically it's usually at the very least TM and possibly also term-based. Machine translation is not frequently part of the GMS system, although it may very well be included. So basically, in a nutshell, if you really want to describe what a GMS is, it's a CMS with workflow for pre-translation and also potentially for some post-translation for updating and maintaining translation assets. So when we're looking then at the way the CMS workflow incorporates the GMS, it's the same thing I showed you before, except that you've got a GMS in the midst of it, And a GMS I've got there is a cloud because it's a whole lot of stuff that has to happen. I'm going to show you a little bit more in detail. This is basically what a GMS looks like. That's why I put the cloud into there. I couldn't possibly include that entire diagram. And where you see the little blue markers, those are all individual either. Those would be typically best practices and/or standards. So this is a very nice diagram that I happened to find that I think was put together a while back by IAT and Inc. So firstly, what we're starting off with is some source content that's usually through CMS, and this shows you the integration point of the GMS. And you're assuming that there's some internationalization already of your process and also your assets themselves. So they're ready to be localized. And there's a workflow that based on changes and business rules, submits the content into the GMS, and that decides, which languages are going to be, in fact, chosen, and it then also creates a job. XLIFF we have, it's typically as a container for the extracted localizable content that's been shifted into the localization workflow. And you might have, for example, some types of software configuration management systems as well involved with this, because there might be some content contributed in from your software artifacts. And then that goes in through a segmentation leveraging process. The segmentation is where we chunk up the strings, because the way that transition memory tools work is that they take the smallest string unit, which we refer to as a segment, and we then use that and leverage it in matching. So that's what gets looked up in a translation repository or in a terminology base or in a translation memory system. It's a segment. And segments are usually sentences, and there'll be some complex rules perhaps. Each individual vendor for tools typically has their own algorithm for deciding the segmentation rules. So that's why there's something called SRXs out there. So that's the segmentation rules exchange standard that's presently just been published by Lisa. And that then tells us that what rules are being used for might be used for a particular content to describe how the content was chunked up. And we have in word count, so we want to be able to track some of the word count costing. So typically the way that if you're not familiar with the localization, you're paying for translation of each word. Then you're also paying for a fee for each word that has been leveraged from the past. So you're usually paying for managing the integration of your translation memory in. It's a much smaller fee than your original. So it's only about a third or so. So instead of about 30 cents, you're paying about 10 cents or so per word that's been reused. That's still pretty expensive. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit further. This speaks to a little bit about Nick's analogy about the shirts going to a laundry. So you only include your clean laundry in there, because you're going to pay for all of it all over again. So just include the dirty laundry, which means just include the stuff that needs to be translated if you've got content that's already previously translated. Hand that off to your finally, everything gets put in the right place back into the content management system. So all the localized content gets updated appropriately, and it's ready for distribution. Okay, and so now, these are just a few of the vendors that are out there today. The prominent ones, certainly, for providing CMSs and GMSs, will support DITA and XLIFF. So each of these has made claims about supporting DITA and XLIFF to some extent. And so I'm not maybe one of them over the other. There is actually, I believe, the ones that actually, typically, that I was about to, I might do a little bit of a walkthrough potentially with a tool, if my network cooperates, a little bit later on to show you what that might look like. And so an XLIFF document is a container for all localization data, which means it's going to contain localizable contents, the objects themselves, strings and graphics, and anything else that's actually going to be converted to the target language. Then there's supplementary information that's associated with the content you're working on, so glossaries and so you might, anything that you need in order to recreate the original format. And finally, then there's administrative information, so things like workflow information, like who the translator is, what the state of the work is, and the custom data itself, which information about tools and/or any kind of add-ons that you might have. And XLIFF is actually a bilingual model. And this is where so what this means is where XLIFF is really most useful is in using it as a container for working through the entire life cycle of the localization process. So it contains a file element, stores one source language. You can have multiple files in each document, which means that one XLIFF file can be a container for the entire project, which is brilliant because then it makes it a lot easier to move content around without actually losing it. And so you don't have hundreds or whatnot of small files to keep track of. You're only going to be shipping around stuff that needs to be localized. And then also, the rationale for the bilingual model is that this is basically going to be used to translator. The translators only really work on one language, maybe one or two, but typically for each project they're really only working on a source language, like for example English, and a target language, like for example Spanish. If you need to, for example, additional languages, for example, certain dialects could be used in the all-trans as well. So you're going to see a little bit more about this model. This is the desktop localization process. You're going to see this mostly next week. And in this model, you have an author who creates some content in XML, DITA XML, and then that goes to a localization manager who decides basically what or how it's going to be distributed around to the translators, and creates some sort of a translation kit. That goes out to a translator. The translator then hands it off to a linguistic reviewer, and it might go on to maybe additional reviewers for technical accuracy and so forth. And it comes back, reviewed, translation kit then gets updated and goes back to wherever it just gets added to the content repository. Now, what I really wanted to show you was where the CAT tools actually are used. So CAT tools are the computer-aided translation tools. That's where you get to use all the translation memory and so on. And that's happening on the translator's side. All right, so the translator's using usually a desktop workspace. And for looking at the traditional tools like Trados, then that's really they're working strictly on a desktop model. And in that desktop model, then they're going to be, in fact, actually looking up stuff locally as they're translating it. So what that means is then that you're going to be charged for each and every single fuzzy match, every single full translation. There's going to be some charge associated with it because you're not actually handing off a partially translated translation kit. You're handing off typically always a fully untranslated piece of content. We look at the automation across an enterprise with DITA and XLIFF, then we have quite a, it's a little bit different. It's where we have a couple of specific touch points where it kind of feels like translator at all. So you'd be recovering the cost of any of the 100% matching translated strings from the past without having to pay for the fractional cost of managing those by the translation for the localization vendor. So in its workflow, it does require some translation after it's been pre-processed. Then it's going to then go, perhaps, instead of going as a translation kit to the translator, the best practice would be to, if you don't need to have the vendor translate with content, for example, being able to view the English source in its original format and layout as you're translating in order to determine the context of certain strings. That's the normal practice. So if you don't need that, you're just translating a bunch of strings, then you can just simply use a web-based interface browser. And the translator makes the translations accordingly and hands it off to a linguistic reviewer. It then gets updated. You then update your post-translation workflow, so you update all your repositories, your translation memory, your machine translation corpus, etc., and then that goes back to a DITA file conversion, and it updates the CMS accordingly. And it's available for the publications manager. So why use XLIFF in this process? Because you can work through this process without ever converting from DITA to XLIFF. You can. But typically, if you're going to work through an enterprise system, you need to have a model for handling your metadata. So that's project metadata primarily that's going to help you to make sure that you have greater control over your localization assets. DITA doesn't have that built into it presently. So if we add that metadata to DITA provided in XLIFF, it's going to help you save because you don't have to hand off the 100% translations to the translator. They never have to see that. Or they get it and it's automatically been approved already as a translation. They don't have to, in fact, actually to do anything with it. And you get faster turnarounds, and you get better quality because you've got it is actually being automated. XLIFF works best in an enterprise environment. It works quite well because it ensures that your packages it's being handled accordingly throughout the entire life cycle. And it also then reduces your vendor lock-in because a lot more vendors provide support for XLIFF nowadays. You can change your tools vendors, and you can change also your localization service provider as well. A lot of them now understand XLIFF. Now, I could ask this quite a bit. You don't actually have XLIFF is a interchange format, but there are going to be some things that need to change when you're handing off between tools. That's just unfortunately going to be the case. You're going to have to do some sort of perhaps tweaking because tools are oftentimes updating information with some proprietary formats and structures in XLIFF that other tools may not understand. So there would be potentially some XSLTs, but the migration from XLIFF to another tool should be a lot less painful than moving from a proprietary format where firstly that format itself is not is indeterminate and not published in open fashion at all. And finally, it integrates with other localization standards for XLTMs. You've heard about SGX and OASIS. And OASIS, you might ask yourself, well, what is that? I've never heard it. It's a brand new TC, and Andre Citron, who's going to be following me here in this talk, he's the open architect. He's chair of it. The basic concept is XMLTM, DITA, and XLIFF. I'll let him speak to it more in his talk. There's a lateral architecture that, as you can see, it builds upon existing internationalization and localization standards. And XLIFF is in there, and DITA is in there as well as an authoring standard. And TMX for translation memory. And as I said, I'll let Andre speak to more of this. In terms of the scenario that you would have for the XML TM source, the way that this normally works is demo, but I'm afraid actually I don't actually have a working connection to that at the moment, so I'm actually going to take a pass on it, and maybe if there's more time, I certainly want to have also Andre, I'd like to turn over to Andre so he can continue on, and if possible, I might come back and do a demo itself. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
We can switch the ball to Andre.
We have.
There we go.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much, Joanne. I realize we're like an hour and 10 minutes into this webinar, so I'm going to try and keep my bits as clear and keen as possible. What I'm going to talk about is that DITA and XLIFF are brilliant, they're fantastic, but they shouldn't be viewed just in isolation. There's a lot of really good things around that make DITA and XLIFF even better. Why are DITA and XLIFF so successful? Well, apart from being very clever concepts, they're based on open standards. Open standards are the best example of IT best practice you can get. You get a group of interested subject matter specialists, they get together, they review all of the matters at hand, and they come up with a specification. A standard is a very detailed specification. Prime example of best practice in IT. You write the specification, and then people can program according to that specification. Also because they're open, they're published for public comment. Public comment is extremely important for open standards. All comments are reviewed and analysed and incorporated back if appropriate into the standards. So we end up with some really good output, and open standards end up being much better designed because they've been reviewed in an open forum. They make the actual standards much cheaper to implement because there are no royalty costs to actually, there are no dues you need to pay. You know that if it's going to be adopted by many people, then it's worth investing time and money in writing the software to do it, because it will be able to operate with other standards and makes it much safer to use as well. So open standards are, I've been working in IT for 25 years, I think they're fantastic. DITA and XLIFF, as we've talked about, Tony's specifically mentioned in the past, they're only part of the picture. They do make the whole process of authoring and of translation much cheaper, much more effective, but they come within a whole ecosystem of other standards. At the bottom we have Unicode. Where would it be without Unicode? I remember in the 1990s when I was dealing with something like 10 different code pages and characters being corrupted left, right and centre. It was a nightmare. XML's given us a tremendous freedom and ability to interchange from everything from web services through to really quality tools in terms of authoring. We now have OpenOffice, Microsoft, all supporting XML publishing. In the IT field, XML has basically gone through like a tsunami. Everybody uses it for, well, we would in the past use property files, etc. XML vocabulary standard ones are extremely important. One of the main reasons why DITA is so successful is that prior to DITA, you would have to hire a XML consultant to come in. You must probably kiss goodbye close to $250,000 for them to custom tailor an XML vocabulary for you. With DITA, you have it free off the shelf. Other well-known vocabularies like XHTML, SVG for graphics, DocWork, etc. These all increase adoption, reduce the costs. Underpinning the main concepts of XML in terms of publishing XMLTM. XMLTM is a very clever technology that actually takes the DITA reuse principle down to the sentence level. It basically keeps a running count of all sentences in the file, in a document during its cycle, its document its life cycle, and actually notices what's changed and what hasn't changed. And that gives us the ability to have both author memory, as Joanne mentioned previously. Author memory, if you have 20 different authors, you'll have 40 ways of writing the same piece of text, depending on how they're feeling during the day, etc. We all have different voices, we have different places, we all write differently. We actually write differently during different times of the day and month. So author memory, which is underpinned by XMLTM, gives us the ability to monitor and ensure consistent writing style, so that we do always say click on the button rather than press the button, rather than choose the button. That's linked very closely to translation memory. Translation memory actually within XMLTM exists within the document itself, so it's actually part of the syntax of the document. It's not seen by the authors or the translators, but it is there. Underpinning everything else, we have SRX for segmentation rules exchange, we have W3CITS, which is the international notation tag set, which actually for a given XML vocabulary tells us what is translatable, what's not translatable. We have Unicode Technical Report 29, which tells us how to actually identify words. In some languages it's not easy. It's quite difficult in Thai and ideographic languages like Chinese, Japanese and Korean. Then we have TMX, which is Translation Memory Exchange. GMX, which is the Globalization Memory Matrix Exchange format, which is effectively standard for word counts and character counts. To date, until the advent of GMX, every single translation tool vendor dreamt up their own way of counting words and characters. If you look at Word, if you look at OpenOffice, they produce different word counts. All of the other tools the translation vendors use have completely different word counts. And then at the end we have XLIFF, which is the core part of this, which enables us to exchange localization data in a free and easy manner, non-proprietary. So, Axel is a new OASIS reference architecture. It's like SOA, service-oriented architecture. It brings together all the relevant standards for XML offering localization, and with an automated and a CMS-based environment can really substantially reduce the costs of authoring and localization. So the main standards, this is a list of them. We mentioned them in the previous slide, so and this is how they all look. XMLTM is the main vehicle which underpins OAxel and the other standards. So it's like the sun at the center of the OAxel universe. How does this actually affect things? Well, this is a slide taken from presentation by Professor Reinhard Scheler from the Localization Research Center at Limerick University. Basically, oddly enough, translation accounts only for about 33% of the costs of translation, the actual translator. The rest is taken up by overheads, project management, these conversion fees, managing memories, etc. Out of those costs and overheads, about 10% is taken up just managing translation memories as a translation memory vendor. And obviously the rest is profit, which we don't begrudge the localization companies, otherwise they wouldn't do it. So why is such a process so expensive in terms of, a third is what we're looking for, we have to pay 2/3 for other things. Well, this is the traditional translation process. We take our source text, we send it to the localization provider, he then extracts the text, runs the extracted text for a TM process, prepares the text for translation, it's then sent to a translator, it goes through a QA cycle, and at the end we end up with our target document. Every single red arrow is a potential point of failure. People go sick, people leave the company and forget which memories to run, which clients' files against, translators go on holiday, fall sick, things get lost in email, get corrupted, etc. And this all adds up to the costs, and I've seen every single one of these things go wrong. So why does OAxel make a difference? Well, as Tony showed in his slide, it basically automates the whole process. Within a globalization management system, a GMS, hooked into a content management system, it completely automates all of the processes. At Ford of Europe, where we set up a system like this, we found that actual transaction memory matching increased by 25% over having it done by the translation companies. And this is quite understandable because there it was very much a process that was run by human beings. If you automate that, you have none of the kind of frailties and the points of failure that human beings are liable to commit. So you end up with much more effective, much better matching. The other important thing is that this process with XLIFF introduces in-context flat matching, which means that the translators don't have to, they can see the translated text with in-context exact matches, but they don't have to review them necessarily. So the XLIFF, as Tony mentioned in his previous presentation, gives us the ability to then do wondrous things. Because it's a well-defined format, we can actually use web services, and one of the things to note that if you're an enterprise-level customer and you're dealing with something like DITA, you really need to have web services connectivity to your language providers because you're dripping files constantly. As files become ready for translation, they should be sent via an automatic route to your translation companies. So you can either actually use XLIFF to exchange the data via web services, or because XLIFF is a beautifully formed XML document, you can use it to actually drive a web to translator interface. So you can actually use the XLIFF file to create a completely browser-based interface. And this is an example of one which my company produces. It has all of the standard dictionary terminology and translation memory management facilities, and the translator is able to log in and translate straight off the web browser. Works with Firefox and Internet Explorer, and it means the files don't have to get sent out. The translation company, localization service provider, can get its translators to come in and translate straight off of the web page. You're not sending files out. You always have access to the most up-to-date version. Nothing gets lost. That's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Back over to Joanne. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Andre. I guess we want to have a few minutes left for questions. Dee, do you have...
We do. Actually, you guys did a fantastic job. This was really good. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the attendees. Most of the questions from the audience I was able to answer as we went. There are just a few, and once again, we're getting close to running out of time. But I want to remind everybody that I sent back to the general list the location and the link where they can find this webinar. We are also going to post the PowerPoint presentations on the different TC lists, which I also stated in the question and answer area. So this was great. I think you guys did a fantastic job. Just a couple, once again, just time for just a couple quick ones. The last one that I got, just because it relates to OAXL. And actually, Andre, if you can go to the OASIS website, because of course, every technical committee, what we would like to do, of course, is have more involvement because that increases adoption. So this is a relatively new technical committee. So if you have more questions about OAXL and you want to know more about that TC, maybe Andre, you can, because we're still looking at your browser, you can go to the OASIS website and point to the home page for OAXL. But the question was, how does OAXL... You want me to do... You know what, actually, I can do it. Would you like for me to do it? I'm happy to do it. That's okay. That's okay. No problem. But the question is, how does OAXL integrate with a CMS? Perfect.
Right, okay. Basically, within the CMS, OAXL handles all of the aspects of authoring and localization. So every time a document goes out for authoring, So typically it gets booked out of the CI scope and then booked in again. XML-TN kicks in with SRX, W3CITS, and it compares the document coming back as with the document that went out, and updates all of the identifiers. It maintains unique identifiers for every single sentence in the document. Now, when we come to actually translate the document has been actually pre-digested by OXL through XML-TN in order for us to very easily create an XLIFF document from it. It makes the creation of an XLIFF document very simple. Once the translated document comes back in again, we recreate the target document, which is a complete mirror image. It's a separate document, it's a complete mirror image in terms of all of the elements and all of the identifiers as the original document was. So when we now take our original source document and update it, then any text that's changed around it gets new identifiers. So when we come to translate again, we basically now know everything that's changed and not changed in that document. So everything that hasn't changed, we can actually automatically populate all of the translations into it. And this is especially relevant in large-scale enterprise level content management systems where prior to product launch you go through a lot of engineering changes. I spent 6 years at board working on product launches there, and right up to the last minute there are significant changes sometimes to the documentation. So this method of using Excel enables you just to send out the translation all of the pre-matched text with only the things that are absolutely have changed to be actually translated. And you get into a cycle there where you may have the same document going out for translation 5 or 6 times in rapid succession, sometimes within a month, being translated, taken back again, updated, translated, coming back again. And this system substantially reduces the possibility of error, but B, also reduces the translation costs, because it makes it so much easier for the translation company, because effectively they do what they're good at, and that's getting the right translators and making sure that the quality is correct. And they don't have to worry about
Andre, can I ask a question about it? We need to have a content management system that is XML aware.
No, this is actually very interesting. I've done a lot of work over the last year which is related to this. One of the things in the past, if you were actually working with XML documents, and typically they would be very large documents, you're talking about the docbook type approach, where a document is either the whole document or a chapter, then you really needed an XML content management system, otherwise it didn't scale. The whole process, if you were trying to do it off the back of a standard content management system, they just didn't scale appropriately. The interesting thing is, my experience at Xerox and Ford over the last 18 years, what I've seen, Ford were a very good example of this. If you're taking the DITA approach and you're using small granular documents, then the whole intelligence of the document is in the maps. The maps actually hold that. And the old paradigm that you needed absolutely an XML content management system to handle XML documents is gone out of the window. Ford actually wrote their own with a very talented group of 4 software engineers off the back of Oracle. The whole map concept and the small granularity of XML DITA documents means that you can very effectively scale up.
Okay, I think we're out of time.
Off the back of relational databases.
We are, but before we go, I would really like to mention to all the folks that are still with us, and once again, this was a great presentation. There is a technical DITA to XLIFF and back presentation that will be presented on the 23rd of September at the exact same time. I have the web page in front of you now. If you would, the easiest way to get to it, here's the URL, and once again I will be sending this around to everyone. It's very easy to find this. If you go to the OASIS homepage and you click on the webinars, which once again is right on the homepage, scroll down, and we've got the technical presentation on the 23rd, and I would encourage everyone that is interested in a more deep dive to sign up for that webinar as well. And I would love to thank our presenters. You guys did a great job, and I am very appreciative for the attendees. This was a great session. Thank you very much for your feedback. Have a great day. Thank you.